So welcome to the show, Steve. Steve Wynn. I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah.
Steve Wynn. Awesome, awesome. So Steve, you're a filmmaker, production staff based out of Philly, and I know we were just kind of briefly talking a second ago that we know Jared No, who I actually had on the podcast.
Oh,
I think about a month ago. Yeah. And so you're in the Philly area. So I know we must have run into each other on a couple of projects here and there. But Steve, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you've been up to.
What I do is I'm a production manager mainly as of now. I've been in the independent film scene for probably around 10 years. I've worked on probably about 30 feature films. Budgets ranging from 100,000 to 5 million. Obviously, starting out, it was a lot more, a lot lower budgets, and hopefully in the future, I continue to be working on the bigger budget things. And who knows if Fast and Furious 20 gives me a call in the future. But just taking it day by day, and that's where I'm at. I kind of do around 3 to 4 feature films a year, budget ranging between that. I haven't done $100,000 movie in a long time, but it's probably around like $500,000 to a couple million. Usually non-union crew, but obviously most of them are SAG films.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of lucked out recently and got into acting, and did some acting on some semi-well-known crime shows, all those crime shows on ID or PBS or what have you. So it's
Detective number 2.
Yeah, I mean, they're easy to laugh at, but a lot of people watch these shows. So
no.
So it's. I mean, I personally don't watch the shows except for the ones I'm in, obviously. But there's a lot of people watching those shows. But how would you say you've been impacted, in the last 4 or 5 months, the current state of affairs?
I mean, it did shut down a production I was on. I was, we were gearing up for a feature shooting in end of March. At the same time, I actually had another job offer to shoot something in Connecticut for a couple of weeks during that time, but I chose to do my own thing on a lower budget to have a little more control over. But they got to finish their filming just as Pennsylvania started, or all the other states started enacting the shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
And our shoot was basically our prep. We had one more prep week, but looking at the trends and stuff, me and the producer, we were like, listen, it looks like we're going to shut down. So we need to decide now to kind of do it before we spend another week of prep. And you start bringing in all the departments and everything. And that easily is, another $20,000, $30,000 on that size budget to be kind of lost, And we chose to, shut down as early as we did, minimal losses. I was kind of excited for a little. I'm sure all of us were kind of a little bit excited to at least kind of be home for a couple months. I didn't foresee us being in this predicament this long. I mean, we never lived through something like this. So, we thought maybe another month, if everybody kind of works together, this will kind of die out and things will open back slowly. And it just was every day. I mean, we're still kind of going through it now of where are we, what's next? I was fortunate enough 3 weeks ago to be on a shoot. So that's helped financially, and also like gives you kind of a little bit of pride and stuff during this time, But yeah, the couple months were kind of dead, and it's, even the phone calls that you do get about movies, it's always kind of like, okay, we can talk about it, but until, before you get a phone call, you're just kind of like, is the money in the bank? And then if the money's in the bank, it's for real. Now the phone calls come and it's like, is the money in the bank and do you have a plan? Do you know the costs of the COVID things? Do you know the atmosphere? Are we going to get shut down again? You know, you need to anticipate some sort of sick pay or sick leave and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff that for a producer, I think it can be, I mean, I think it's manageable. I think a lot of companies are doing it, but I mean, we're looking at tight margins to begin with. So to just look at an extra $75 to $100,000 for any production that's movies are used to be made for that price, you know?
Yeah.
You know, with a bunch of friends or a really tiny crew. I mean, you can make a movie for that. So, I mean, that's something hard to kind of continue with. And also with, you know, I'm getting scripts and I'm looking at them and they're like written pre-COVID, you know, people that are, you know, 20 people to a room and there's 30 at background and there's, you know, a supporting cast of 30 people and the magnitude of it all and like, you know, 30 different locations. It's just kind of like bizarre to even sometimes for me to see that script land, you know, on my desk, quote unquote, to just, it's just like, well, are you even considering hack? Like, I don't want to be the guy to like,
Yeah, like red penciling. You got a red
yeah,
pencil,
I don't
like, you
want to be
know,
that
have,
guy.
yeah.
I don't want to be that guy to like shut everything down, but it's
I
just,
mean, so like, you know, you have a script and you have a writer and maybe some other producers that are they willing to sacrifice waiting another year or two to shoot this the way that it was originally written, or you can just start taking red pen to paper and just say like
yeah,
different room, you know, half the amount of characters, different location. It's in an office instead of like, you know, outside, it's inside and stuff like that. Yeah.
I mean, we're already as an independent film kind of already in a trend where we're being put in a position where as production staff and as production management, we're kind of like the I don't know the word, but maybe some sort of barrier for the crew in the sense that we're at the top of the below the line where we we can kind of like dictate or talk to the producers and like about, you know, the work hours and the work environments and all this stuff. And we're, you know, I mean, our industry for a long time has been kind of talking about how, you know, not enough sleep, long hours, all this stuff. And so, you know, and the producers are usually they're almost too optimistic and they're not evil in the sense that it's like, it's just the bottom line and it's all about the money because, well, from my world, it's the money is, they have a lot of risk because most of the time it's not even sold, you know, they don't have a distribution in place. So they do have $1 million invested or $500,000. I mean, you can buy a bunch of houses with these numbers. So, but they're, you know, they want to get the best possible product as possible. And then, you know, you as production manager or line producer, or whoever has to be those people that help with either scheduling in a way or budgeting in a way that people can work in a, you know, have some fun or at least some sort of pride where, you know, normally people don't care about OT, you know, they don't care about overtime. They would, you know, what's an extra, you know, $30, you know, it's just, they want to they want to feel like they can go home and do something or like be able to eat their cooked meal as opposed to like stopping by McDonald's and then, you know, eating that. So then with this new environment, it's another obstacle and another kind of problem to almost bring up if, you know, if the producers are already kind of in that mentality, the writers and directors are like, you know, let's get this movie done. But then you look at how big it is. And then now with COVID, you're just looking at the amount of how big it is because you need to test everybody. You need to contact trace everyone. It's like how you can't manage that. It almost gets too big to manage. And it's already hard enough to make a movie. So
Yeah.
That's where we are. It's kind of tough, you know, it's tough to, you know, you want to make money and I'm sure everyone's in a position to You know, it feels like we're starting over again, where you weigh those, like, am I just gonna like deal with hell for a couple months and make some money, or do I have to kind of stand up and kind of put some, you know, just kind of let them know, like, this is what it is what needs to be done, or you need to find somebody else. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's tricky, especially now. But yeah, it's a tricky balance. Even before COVID, it was always a tricky balance. It was, you know, and I've mentioned, you know, situations like this on my show before, where, you know, you're pinching pennies. You're trying to milk, you know, every dollar out of a nickel when it comes to, you know, a production budget. And you know, there's this famous debate that I always reference, where somebody wrote a flag football game. It was a flag football game with hundreds of people, it was between like the FBI and the Marines, you know, at Quantico, and they're having a flag football game, and they're competitive. And the whole point of the scene was to show how tough this female FBI agent is. She clocks this Marine in the face during the flag football. You know, hundreds of the spectators, you know, like 100 other Marines watching, 100 other feds watching, they all like storm the field. It's a big melee. And I said, dude, we could cut this down to an indoor basketball game. You know, 20 people, you know, in the stands, like, you know, and the basketball court at Quantico's gym. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like a big court or anything. And that would leave us, that would cut it down. But now, not only do you have to rethink structurally, you know, your scenes for budget reasons, we're also got to factoring in how many people are on set, how many crew and cast do we need on set because of COVID, because of social distancing, because of having a freaking, you know, incubator in there with the virus. And it's like, okay, we got to completely restructure our shooting schedule, our budget, you know, our scene breakdowns. We have to do complete rewrites to accommodate for the size of cast and crew that we can accommodate now. And it's tricky.
And these like, you know, if you can get the producers on your side, it's a great thing. But, you know, a director, has to be the most creative person that's almost being hired on the entire show. Mm-hmm. Obviously, art department is really creative too, but they are the director of the creative vision, right? And so sometimes it irks me to kind of think that, you know, when you give them a problem or an obstacle, it's like, can you solve it creatively? Like, you know, this idea of like, well, I can't see it any other way, or, you know, it is what it is. It's like, it's not, it is what it is. It's like, dude, you're the creative person, you know, like, think of another way. And, you know, if you look at the masters of cinema, right? I mean, I feel like sometimes they learn from like those bad anecdotes of like Kubrick or something, who does like 100 takes, or it is my way or the highway. But if you look, for the most part, a lot of these directors go through obstacles and they create something different, and it turns out better.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but in a way, you know, I wish the producers could back me up in this sometimes, but it's like, you're getting paid also to be creative in that sense, right? Like, if something doesn't work or can't work, think of another way. You know what I mean? Like,
it's your job to come up. It's your job to come up with a different way of doing this.
Said about that scene, like, it's like, did it lose anything? If it's a matter of action for a scene, right? Why don't you just make that, instead of an event, it becomes this smaller show, and it's just, let's film this in a way that's pretty badass, and let's make it really action packed, as opposed to showing, oh, I need an arena full of people and all this, you know what I mean? Like, let's just focus on the action then. And you could have made a badass scene. Like, that's the kind of creativity you want out of them.
Yeah. And the first thing, you know, what to touch upon the point you were making, is the first thing that comes to my mind was Spielberg with Jaws. Yeah. You know, he couldn't stand that freaking shark. So he got rid of the shark throughout the first, you know, 2 hours of the movie. And he made it, you know, he made ambiance. He made suspense through not knowing what's out there, through not seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's why Jaws was even more horrifying than if it was like Sharknado or the Meg or the Megalodon or whatever, where you see it all the time, you know. Another one is what was that? The Godzilla movie that came out, I think, in 2013 or 14 or 15 or something. And every time Godzilla was about to fight one of those other titans,
yeah,
they would shut the hatch door. The camera would pull away, and you're like, what the? And like big fans want to see like that big monster against monster fight, and it's kind of like that Spielberg way where they didn't have to do a bunch of CGI on 17 different monster fights in Godzilla. They did one major fight, just like with Jaws. They did one major scene at the very end of the movie where Jaws was like eating up half the ship, and like, you know, it was even climbing up on the ship. But for the whole first hour and a half of the movie, you never saw the shark, and because apparently they were having just a nightmare of a time dealing with the mechanical shark.
Yeah.
So he was like, scrap it, go fix it.
Yeah.
Scrap it. All right, scrap the shark for the day. Go fix it. Figure out. Try to make it waterproof. I know it will shoot. I know it will shoot instead today. And he shot everything but the shark that day.
Yeah.
Which created a more horrifying movie. So with your point and with my point, it's like you're not losing the threat of the shark. You're not losing the existence of the shark. It's just, say, you know, instead of it being, you're still seeing how tough like this FBI girl is that punches this Marine, whether it's a basketball game or whether it's a flag football game, whether it's in an indoor gym or an outdoor field, you know, it's all the same. You're getting the same character realization or anecdote.
Yeah, I know. That's what, we would hope. Sometimes these directors and creatives, they, you know, have a way of getting to their position, and you know, but they should feel really lucky, but they also should do their part into, you know, and I don't want to be in a position to say, well, do it a different way because I want to save $50,000. You know, if it makes sense, it makes sense. I just need to let you know, even I first AD'd, you know, you kind of throw in some solutions. It's like, well, can we live? If you look in the edit, do we really need this shot? Because it's going to cost us 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and sometimes they're like, well, I need it. I don't, you know, sometimes they're like, I just don't know what's going to happen in the edit. Sometimes the director's like, well, you know, you're right. Let's just pick up, you know, whatever their hand, you know, from maybe this, you know, dialogue, you know, scene instead of the whole scene for coverage.
Yeah.
Those are the things that, you know, we are a team. We want to make it work. There's nobody in production that, like, I just don't, like, as a production man, I just don't think about just the money. I want it. If the movie does well, it makes me look good, right? Like, I don't want it to, just because I got it under budget. Like, that's not my point. My point is, like, sometimes, like, is that worth $50,000, and can that go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a, you know, if, you know, some, you know, as simple as, you know, when before pre-COVID, something with, you know, a scene with a lot of extras, you know, on screen, if you lose 10 people, like, it depends on the environment. Like, a bar can look kind of packed if it's only 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it all depends on, like, what you want out of the scene. So, you know, like, on, you know, we're in reality, so we, of course, we think, oh, well, I want this bar packed and it's, you know, 30, 50 people, but the camera doesn't show the entire room. You know,
Right.
you see movement. It looks busy. You add sound. It's, you hear chatter and some glasses clanking. It's the environment, right? You just created that. We used to call it movie magic. And I wish we had a little more movie magic and creativity.
And again, I think that is where, you know, we always find new innovations. We find a way to persevere, innovate, you know, adjust, readjust, aim, re-aim, readjust, and refire. And like every time this country gets hit with a hiccup, You know, we always get back. I wish I had a list of just all these different inventions and innovations and inventions and new discoveries just from, um, you know, adversity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just I mean, the Great War. You know, World War One and the Depression and World War Two and the Spanish flu. You know, I think during or before World War One. I mean, all these things have, you know, caused us to kick it into overdrive and come up with new and better and greater things. And this is going to do the same. I mean, there's a lot of headbutting now. There's a lot of bad and misinformation, bad information. There's a lot of crazies out there saying this doesn't exist, that doesn't exist. And that's to be expected because I'm sure even then there was a lot of idiots doing that then. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, facts are facts. You know, numbers keep rising. So, you know, we get smarter, you know, we get hipper, we get faster, stronger, and then the tools. And even you know, at the start of this, I think back in like April or May, so somebody on my show said we've advanced 10 years in 10 weeks. You know, and it's like, you know, we've almost advanced 20 years in 20 weeks. You know, tech. I mean, you and I were just having a conversation whether we're going to use Zoom or Google Meet.
Right.
I never heard of those things, you know, a month ago. I was like, well, Google Hangouts, but I don't know how to take Google Hangouts and put it through a streaming platform. And it took me about 24 hours when some other colleagues and myself, we sat down and we figured and we started looking into taking the virtual conferences and plugging Zoom into, you know, different decks. And it only took us 24 hours. Like we kicked it into overdrive.
Right.
And we took a lot from what other people were doing in the last week or two, and we kind of like came up on some of our own ideas.
Sorry, did you have this podcast before the pandemic, or?
Well, me and some colleagues tried a podcast similar to this about a year ago, and you know, nothing really came of it. But now, you know, during the pandemic, since everything is telework and work from home, this is pretty much, you know, this and a couple other things. This is it. So,
and the Zoom thing almost created a infrastructure for it, and
yeah, it really did. It really did. And you know, like I said, just adversity. It just continues to create perseverance. Adversity creates perseverance. And I had a long discussion with a family member, and it was one of those, you know, God conversations. Is there a God? Why would God test us? Why would God, you know, kill so many people in Beirut? Why would God, you know, kill so many people with this virus? Why would God give cancer to kids? And, you know, I don't want to get too philosophical, get too deep, you know, within just, you know, just the rest of this hour that we have. But, you know, there was a lot of back and forth with that. And, you know, to each his own for their personal beliefs and what have you. But, you know, I wholeheartedly believe in the whole testing, you know, God's testing to kind of strengthen, you know, the whole argument God gave us free will and, you know, to test us, to strengthen us for our experiences and then pass that on. And so when these things happen, it's like we learn from it. And it's not that we can't take advantage of it. I think there's a lot of people out there with the wrong agendas taking advantage of it. But going away from the whole philosophical, religious, you know, much bigger discussion for a much bigger day. But, you know, it comes down to filmmaking, man. Like somebody decided to invent Steadicam, I think, on The Shining. The Shining was the first film to use the Steadicam, I think.
Oh, I'm not sure.
But somebody decided, like, man, these shots working with Kubrick is rough. Working with Kubrick is rough. I got to invent something.
I can't hold the camera steady enough.
I can't hold this camera for 100 takes with this guy.
We can't do this dolly shot for
over and over. Oh, you know what? I have a good idea. How about I just strap it and I can just walk back, do it again, just walk back, do it again. Boom, Steadicam invented because Kubrick was driving his DP nuts. That's probably what happened.
No, I mean, before my thought disappears, I think I want to go back to, you know, persevering. And obstacles and new ideas coming out of things. I think, I think we lost for the past 40 years or so. I think humanity has kind of lost that idea of suffering. And I know that Buddhist thing of like life is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the idea that you need to embrace it. It's not like you celebrate it. I think it's something that everyone's so scared of dealing with, and that, everything's all about happiness and happiness. But it's like, how about satisfaction? How about pride? How about, all these things that when you add it up, it leads to happiness. But happiness is just an emotion of the day, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't stay with you. But, even if you're sad, but if you can feel like you've accomplished something, like that goes a long way, where, that's why I think everyone's, really depressed, and, this idea of like hiding your emotions. And now, I mean, we're seeing like the floodgates open now. I mean, everyone's emotional and stuff. I mean, we've been told to kind of hold it in, and it's all about happiness. And people are like, why am I not happy? And it's like, well, it's not about happiness. I think the narrative needs to be taken away. And, and now we have, less religion. So people are grasping for identity and all this. And I think everyone's kind of lost. And, they're looking for, justice in certain ways, or causes. And, you hear somebody who speaks well, you follow them because, it's not the church anymore, right? It's not your religious institution. So in a way, like these other institutions are popping up, replacing, because we are social beings, and we need to be in social settings. We need to have some sort of social structure, and it's good to have some leaders and followers, and this is why BLM I got to. I mean, it was a long due kind of thing, because everyone's always pounding at the door, and the door finally got broken open. But yeah, and going back to innovation too. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing. Have you seen The Mandalorian?
Yeah.
So did you see the behind the scenes of how they did that, and how they weren't on location, but they used LED screens?
No,
And for some episodes, they were on locations because they really needed some of the sets. But they were using, it's not green screen. It's not, these were LED screens, and live, in person, project like images. So like if he's out in the desert setting, right? That's just a screen. The crew didn't go out to the desert.
Yeah.
Like that really interests me, in the sense that you don't need these vistas, grand vistas anymore, and travel 100, 150 crew anywhere. And it's not like you're gonna, I mean, there is something about being there, of course, but if it's something as simple as, I mean, it's something the actor can see like in real time. I mean, these are, I think the computers are run by like gaming engines. I don't know the real specifics of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's the Unreal.
Yeah, the Unreal engines.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the camera moves, the background moves a little, the focus on the camera, creates a different depth of field in the background. So, I mean, that idea during COVID, I mean, this was pre-COVID, obviously, but the more studios that are opening, probably investing in this, I think it'll be better even for our trend of movie productions. I mean, you're looking at fucking huge ass budgets, or like tiny, $500,000 films or $1 million films. So to save money and almost make a $10 million movie for $1 million look, I think as everyone's clamoring for more content, and honestly, our industry is competing against YouTube and content creators.
Mm-hmm.
Their budgets are nothing. It's just them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an audience member. Like, I'm in the industry and I don't even watch movies, because let me watch tiny home living on YouTube. You know what I mean? And and if there's something about their authenticity that is attractive, whereas sometimes it's something that's so packaged, it's on HGTV, or like you know, it's too much. Like it just feels inauthentic.
Yeah, yeah, and to touch upon, you know, these LED screens like you mentioned, and you know, Gone with the Wind, they weren't out on location. Most of the times they were in a lot in a studio with hand painted
Yeah,
backgrounds of that southern plantation of the house on fire, and you know they got it. They did a little bit of half screen with a flame behind it, so it looks like the flames burning, and then the other half was a solid painting. And they came up with some slick tricks, and then we came up with green screen. Oh, this is easier. Well, it's kind of easier on the front end, but now it's like, you know, rendering, and exporting, and touching up, and keyframe on the back end, and it's just it's like millions of dollars on the back end green screen. Now here you are with these huge LEDs, so now you're kind of putting more money into the set again, like they did with Gone with the Wind.
yeah,
And it's kind of finding that fine balance where, well, now you have like these LEDs just built, set in, and you have a code, and it's a live code. So now you're getting a little bit more authentic performance from the actors, because you know everybody dumps on the prequel trilogy of Star Wars, but you could tell that they weren't true. It wasn't truly as authentic performance in the prequel trilogy as it was, you know, Mark Hamill and older Obi-Wan. Oh man, Alec Guinness actually sitting out there on a rock in the desert,
right.
shooting the shit on a rock, sitting on a cliff in a real desert with
It's realistic. Like you're saying, like when you talk to somebody, you don't look at them totally all the time, right? You might kind of look off a little bit, look at the sun's maybe a little too shiny, or you know, something catches your eye. Like it's a natural thing, so you can see it. It's like not consciously as a viewer, but you know there's an environment there that they're working with, you know. And yeah, I mean, you know, as a movie guy, I mean, I would love to go back to more practical effects and practical filmmaking. I think we are 20 some years of CGI, and it has not made our cinema experience any better. I don't think. I mean, you know, these big blockbusters, sure, they're making a lot of money, but I don't. There's something about, you know, those older movies that, you know, there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of magic to it. Like there's no magic anymore. It's just like, well, let's just do it in post. Let's just do the VFX, you know, and you almost need to work with what you got. And I like using CGI to like enhance something, but to create a whole world with it, it doesn't feel real. And
sure,
you know, and I mean, I mean, those Marvel films are great, but you know, there is something lacking in there, and you just wonder I mean, I think you pay the money so you can churn out the product a lot quicker, but can you imagine how epic these films could be if they were practical, right? You know, you look at Saving Private Ryan, right? And just imagine how visceral that felt. And if they did that practically with Endgame, do you know what I mean? How insane, and how like you would be like, I mean, the movie was already kind of a holy shit, but
yeah,
there's a fakeness to it that you felt too, you know? Yeah, I mean, there's something you can't create post wise. And I mean, the LED screens are kind of neat because at least you know that they're interacting with that like in real time, as opposed to, that's why it was surprising to see behind the scenes of Mandalorian that, oh wow, because it was done so well, and you just couldn't tell.
Yeah, and yeah, you raise a good point. You know, the films I grew up with, the first thing that comes to mind is Predator, and you got a team of, you know, 7 spec op guys that land out in the middle of jungle forest somewhere, but the Predator, the alien hunter Predator, was a real guy, you know, a big ass dude in a suit, in this crazy ass latex alien bodied suit, and it was trial and error. I think Van Damme played the first one, and it was awful costume, and so he had to be let go. I think, you know, Van Damme's first gig was playing the creature on that movie. Yeah. And it was a totally different creature. It had like a really long, like kind of like snake or dinosaur kind of head, and he fainted. They had to take him to the hospital, and he had to, like, you know, go to the hospital for heat stroke and dehydration or whatever. So they put another guy in the totally different suit, which is what we now know as the Predator, and he was fucking walking around in the same forest as Schwarzenegger and his team, and Carl and you know, Dylan and man, what's his name? Dutch Dylan and Dutch, you know, and their whole team. Now there was that one scene, and then, you know, you so like Predator can give you some ideas of how to pull off a story with fewer characters. There was that one scene where they went into that the Colombian cartel camp, or there were rebels or something like that, and there might have been like 20, 30, 40 rebels there. They're all explosions, gunshots, whatever. But then as the film progressed, it was just the spec ops team in the woods. They lost one guy, then they lost another 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 guy. It got down to Schwarzenegger, and it's like finding ways. I mean, that dude ADing that had probably had to be one of the best gigs. If I was that AD, I would be like, oh, I love it, because there's no way we can't make our days. There's no way we can make our days with just for the second half of the movie, just the Predator and Schwarzenegger. There's no way we can't make our days. You know what I mean?
Well, it all depends on how you schedule, right? So sometimes, you know, when you have some producers that schedule things and they say, well, so-and-so walking through the woods, and then you add a bunch of other scenes, and it's like, you know, this person walking through the woods can take half a day or all day.
Yep.
You know,
yep.
That's one of those kind of things where, you know, everyone focuses on the dialogue, but, you know, the page count. But, you know, if I had a scene where two people, it says, Glenn and Steve fight, like fist fight.
That could be
on paper. Okay, let's do this in 15 minutes on paper, but that could be all day.
All day.
Right. So, and I mean, going back to the Predator thing, I mean, it's because there was CGI hasn't captured like the weight of things. So, you know, something as innocent as like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? As a kid, you're like, wow, that's real. You know, that's another great example. Like, that's a puppet, but at the same time, even as an adult, you watch it, it feels still kind of real, right? There's a magic, and that's why Disney World is kind of great to go to. Like when you see costumes, you know, there's people inside there, but there's a weight to the way they walk. It's a real thing, whether they're pretending or not. You know, where CGI's, it's not like it's totally like nothing. There's nothing there. So I think humans are attracted to other human type of like creations. I think subconsciously. I think that's why, you know, with our future, with the, you know, losing jobs to robots, I think for now filmmaking is okay. You know, I think you know, nobody's gonna be no robot's gonna be writing the next script. I think they'll try, but human touch needs to be still part of it. And I think we are always attracted to people doing stuff together and making something, right? Like that's why craftsmanship, like we had like the past 10 years of craftsmanship, right? You know, oh yeah, this was handmade. This was a carpenter did the molding himself. Like it wasn't factory made. Like there's something about like there's a, you know, a small group of people, but there was a trend where it's just really cool to see artisans and skillsmen and craftsmen like doing what they do best, and you know, because I had that human creative touch, you know, to it. So I mean, I hope that's where. I don't think we'll end up being there. I think maybe Hollywood will crash and burn, but you know, you just hope a billionaire is gonna, just like the '70s, or somebody who has a lot of money to just invest and just, hey, 10 filmmakers I picked, just make some great films. I don't care. Everybody has a budget of $1 million. Just make some good movies, and hopefully you'll get some more Tarantinos and Scorseses and, you know, other people that come from that crop, you know.
And you know, like you said, Hollywood probably won't, crumble and burn. But hey, look, Marvel Studios is not in LA or New York. It's in Atlanta. AMC is out in Albuquerque, shooting everything out there in Albuquerque, if not Georgia. And I think Louisiana's blown up with a lot of productions as well. A lot.
And I think it's a tax credit, and I think
that's
again the kind of unfortunate thing about the industry chasing tax credits. There is something to an inauthentic location for these movies, right? Like, I mean, it's not like I don't care about Atlanta, but when you start seeing a lot more movies, it's like, oh, this is Atlanta, and everything takes place. It's like, it loses the incentive to say, like, let me make a Chicago story. Let me make a Montana story. It's always like, I guess it felt like the rest of the world when it used to be just New York and LA movies. But there was a little bit more of a openness to go to actual locations and shoot there instead of being like, well, let's shoot in Canada for Philadelphia because Canada has a tax credit there. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. I think A History of Violence did that. They went to Philadelphia, but they never really shot anything in Philadelphia.
Right. Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then we have the whole kind of social justice kind of narratives that are coming out, and it's very important. But I think there is an inauthentic thing when it feels forced. Just like, I don't want to compare it to CGI, but if it's not a natural, it's very easy to be like, hey, that's a guy, make it a woman. Oh, that's a white man, make it a black guy. It's like, it feels, I think there should be a push anyway. I mean, there's really no Asian actors, especially male actors that are kind of there. But it's more about the powers that be that kind of let these scripts kind of come to fruition instead of investing. And, I think you should push for it. I think it shouldn't be forced. It's like, well, just like how I was talking about, like, people like me who kind of fight or at least let production know about work hours and safety and certain things, I think there needs to be a level of, what's the word, like wisdom or something, where they're kind of acknowledged, like, as producers, like, to the writers, like, listen, I think this can be any race, right? Instead of like this building of a formula, like, you hear people of color always kind of auditioning for, it says white guy, but I'm going to audition anyway. And sometimes they get it. Because it's like, you don't think, right? You don't think about it. And I think, especially a sci-fi movie, it could be like any race.
It could be anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, yes and no. I get what you're saying. Somebody criticized, I want to say about 7 months ago, somebody criticized to me these commercials that are really pushing LGBT environments into the commercials, and they said, huh?
Do you know what commercials they were?
I think that, like, some of them were makeup and some of them were.
Oh, it's like there's like Levi jeans and like.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it was Levi jeans. Yeah. And I think it was like some clothing and makeup, and I think there was I think there was like a travel thing, and you see like a huge, like in the last year or two, you've seen a lot of different kind of relationships. There's a lot of like interracial relationships, same-sex relationships, non-binary, transgender subjects in these commercials. And someone said, like, it's, oh man, like they're really trying to push it. They're really trying to force it now. And I'm like, are you even watching the commercials?
Yeah.
Who the fuck watches commercials? Why do you care? You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't bother me. Like,
yeah, that definitely doesn't bother me.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and so, but I kind of get what you're saying, to where, like, this character.
It was more about I guess it was more about like the big Hollywood ones. Like the idea that you're just, well, Ghostbusters, let's do a remake. And then it was, you know, it's obviously there's comedic women, but I don't know what was in the writer's room where it was like, well, let's just make it women instead of men.
And then the ditzy man assistant, Chris Hemsworth as the assistant.
It's like subverting the expectations, and sometimes it's like it can work, but maybe it's one of those things that they tried and it just didn't work, and it's not about social justice at all. Maybe I'm phrasing wrong, but maybe I'm falling victim to the news cycle, right? Where they bring this shit up and I just eat it. Like it's almost like when somebody says, "Hey, the new James Bond is going to be a black guy," and you're just like, "Okay." Like,
and so
I'm probably falling victim to this quote unquote race baiting of kind of things that come in, and you're just like, why is this news? And then why is it, you know, maybe I wouldn't think of it anyway. I mean, I probably wouldn't, if without, I guess, commentary, I might not really care. I probably wouldn't see it if it didn't look good. I mean, I guess on the merit of, is it a good movie or not, I'll go see it.
Yeah.
It's not about sexism. I mean, we love Alien, right? I mean, it's
dude, Alien
is female. It has nothing to do with anything. I think if it feels organic, and I think if it felt like from the start it was something, I guess it's more about remakes and franchises, and I think it's about Hollywood kind of breaking some sort of legacy, which I think can be noble, but honestly, I think it's the crew. I mean, fine on paper, everything looks. I mean, on screen, I feel like women are represented fine. I think African Americans are. I think really behind the scenes, it's not a lot of representation at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of hypocritical things. You know, all these people that kind of post these, you know, things about equal, you know, having more representation and all that. But, you know, sometimes behind the scenes, I don't see that. And, you know, you can have an actress that comes on set and her writer, or an actor come on and have a writer that's like vegan only. I don't want, you know, any sort of animal product on set. But how about having a writer that says like, I at least like to see like an effort by production to have people of color or a diverse, you know, I mean, you don't have to hit a quota, but like, can we like try? Because I feel like sometimes people just, and it's not like it's like a white supremacy thing. I think sometimes it's just that's your network, right? Who do I know to be this PA? Who do I know to be that? And so if your network is always kind of white, the effort to like reach out to strangers is a lot more time consuming, but I think it needs to be done. And also we have a legacy of like kind of people that almost don't deserve to be in film are in film because they have the money to support themselves to stay in film and to be there. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure I don't really have a point to all that, but it's just like one of those things where it's like, how do we get here? How do we get here?
No, but I mean, it's a fine balance. It's a tricky balance. Listen, I'm sure, you know, deep down, I want different things than you do. You know what I'm saying? I want to be the star of all the, I want to be this. I want to be the writer. I want to be the director and the actor. I want every character. I want to have the leading role, and I'm a white male. And listen, I want the leading role. And I'm sure you probably want something totally different. And, you know, so it's not only, you know, there's this fine balance between like what the community needs, and there needs to be this general, I believe in, you know, the equality for all, obviously, of course, but every single individual person has an agenda.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, every single person is a human being, and every single human being is selfish. Down to their core, everybody's selfish, and there's no denying that. And so, but if you were to ask me, freaking, you know, Captain Marvel's a female, I don't care. Captain Marvel's that's a fake character. It's a fictitious character. Oh, but you know, they changed and now Jane Foster's going to be Thor, female Thor. I don't care. Thor's a fake character. Oh, but they're going to make Superman black and James Bond black. They don't exist. I don't care. They're fake characters. I mean, to me, you know, and which kind of, Huh?
I said you're making a point.
You know, I mean, which contradicts another point I did make, because to me, in a way, Batman and Superman do exist. I've grown up with them. I've loved them. There's so much, you know, content. Is Star Wars real? Does that exist? Yeah, in a way it does. You know, in this, and which is the beauty of filmmaking. Filmmaking, if and I've brought this up on my show a number of times. If there was such thing as real magic in this world, it's filmmaking. It's storytelling. It's writing. It's film and TV. It's art. It's CGI. It's computer animation. That is, and music. That is real world magic that we have.
Right.
And so, you know, I always get in disputes with other people like, oh, you always like these Marvel movies and fictional Star Wars sci-fi things. And I just want to watch, you know, Lifetime movies like my wife, or I just want to watch, you know, movies that are just, you know, love stories like, you know, marriage. What was it? Marriage Story, or, you know, true life films. I'm like, true life films are great. Documentaries are great. You know, the simple rom-coms and dramedies, they were great. But the true gift that filmmaking gives us is Star Wars and Marvel and DC and you know, Predators and Terminators and you know, Jasons and Freddys and all those things. That's the true magic of filmmaking. You know, a battle, the Dream Warriors taking on Freddy Krueger in a dream world. That's the beauty of the magic of filmmaking. So leading back to, like, at the same time, I don't care if they make Superman black, or
I guess we're all kind of hypocrites in a way.
but see, you know, like James Bond exists to me,
Yeah.
but I don't care if he's, but am I going to be like truly offended? Is my world going to be shattered because they make Superman or James Bond black? No, he's fake.
Yeah.
Now, if they make a movie where Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. are white and JFK and FDR are black, that's kind of inaccurate, because the whole point of what they accomplished in life was Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were black, and that is, you know, that was the basis of what they were trying to change in the world, because they're historical figures. They're real people that did extraordinary things. JFK and I don't know, JFK and you know, FDR, was FDR for Ike?
Johnson?
Well, Ike, Eisenhower, Ike, for during World War II, and you know, like all the, and Churchill. You know, you're not going to, these characters, I don't think should be portrayed by anybody other than accurately, you know, accurate actual race, height, age, gender. You know, I mean, you know, somebody playing Billie Jean King. If it was a guy playing Billie Jean King, that defeats the purpose of what Billie Jean King, the tennis player, was fighting for as a woman, to eventually, you know, come out of the closet and come out as a lesbian, and to get paid more as a female tennis player, and so on and so forth. I mean,
I think what it is like, I think you have like an emotional attachment to something.
Yeah.
I think that, and I don't think it's sexist or racist to feel that way. I think it could be anything where you kind of like reinvent something or like try to take something in a different direction. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of pushback.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's just, we can question why they would do that instead of, you know, I remember when even as simple as Daniel Craig being James Bond, and everyone was like, oh my God, the dude's ugly, or whatever it was. You know?
He's blonde.
Yeah, and it was like,
okay.
And, you know, it's almost like without the race thing, like, you know, every time somebody does, like, when there's a change of something, you're going to get, and this was the internet even around, really? But, you know, people were just like, what the heck? And then what they did was they made him badass. They made it almost in reality, James Bond.
He could actually fight.
And so I'm not against any of that. I think any reboot is great. I think if they do a new spin on it and you can really like the characters, I think it can work. I think what happens is they create you know, let's find a new direction, but then without that, what makes a movie good kind of thing is kind of left out. You know, I mean, the Ghostbusters could have been a great, funny film. Obviously, it had everybody that you liked Bridesmaids on, you know, and there was funny people in it, but then it just felt like, I didn't even watch it, but, you know, you can tell that just the trailer was not there. If they make James Bond Black, you know, cool, and hopefully they'll put him in a different kind of new take, but in a really interesting way.
Yeah, well, I
I have
think
nothing against with Ariel and the Little Mermaid being black. I mean, here's another fictitious person.
yeah, but with that, I don't care. I mean, I know her big deal, and Ariel is my wife's favorite Disney princess. If you want to, I guess she technically is a princess, but because my wife's a ginger, my wife's redheaded, and so of course she loves Ariel, the redhead, and now Ariel's not going to be redheaded anymore. But so I mean, I kind of get that, but that leads me back to like inherently human beings are selfish. You have this tie, to a certain character, a certain universe, a certain ideology, which may not have been, some people, yes, have been tied to racist ideologies. And that's why when Barack Obama became president, a lot of people lost their shit because for years, not only were they from inherently racist families and just institutionally racist environments, but now this country has a black president. And not only is there inherent selfishness and their inherent, for lack of better words, just inherent selfishness. Human beings are inherently selfish. And that is something that needs to be clicked off. And that goes into like our production. You got a writer director that will not budge on his script. I'm like, bro, it's not going to happen. And I've had one director fire me as an AD. I had another director write an awful email to a number of the crew and accused me of directing his whole film. I'm like, dude, listen, at the end of the day, who's going to get the writer director credits?
Yeah.
All I'm going to be getting is a producer credit and a first AD credit. You're going to get writer director credits. Let your team help you. You know what I'm saying? Bro, everything I'm doing as an AD right now, you're still getting your story told. You're still developing your characters the same exact way. We are running the fuck out of time.
Right.
If you want this fight scene and this stunt to happen the way you at all, chop, 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 simple, shoot, done, wrapped.
A first AD kind of put this in perspective once, and I was like, you're going to make your day tomorrow. And he's like, you know what, Steve? I've shot that scene 1,000 times. And he's like, we're going to get it done. And I was like, you know what? Like, it put everything in perspective. It was like, you can only shoot something so many ways. And, like you said, like about how you're giving advice and you're running things a certain way. But these directors or whoever it is that might have pushbacks, like, listen, you might only work once a year or once every couple of years, or this might be your first film. But trust me, like I work on 3 or 4 of these things and maybe tiny stuff in between. Like, your shit is not gold. You know what I mean? Like, just get this scene done. I know, like, when I'll let you know when something's cool and I'll allow you to have that cool thing. But spending an extra hour on this perfect take when it could end up on the cutting room floor is something where it's just like that practicality, because of how they just don't have the experience to understand that. And then if they look back and somebody was like, listen, remember this day? Oh, I shouldn't have spent the time on that. I should have spent more time on, the fight scene or something, instead of me just getting the perfect line delivery at that point, and we had to move on and we lost the day or something like that.
And to touch upon, your AD, I've seen it maybe 100 times. That one shot that you just mentioned, they want to spend all day. It's going to get fucking cut up anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to splice it. This does not need to be a one single camera take, man. I'm telling you, you're going to splice this up anyway. Editing wise, you're probably not even going to fucking use it, man. So, let's come on. But you're right. It's like, well, the point I was going to follow up with is what's more important, the lead's ego, the writer director's ego, the writer director's, precious little baby of a script staying exactly the way it is, or what's more important, the film in its entirety is the most important thing. Let's get the fucking film done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Of course you need to and especially now, of course you have to have COVID compliance. You got to, look out for your cast and crew. Everyone's got to be safe. Everyone's got to be healthy. Everyone's got to be fed. Everyone's got to get sleep. But at the end of the day, what's the most important thing? We're all in this for the same freaking reason.
Do you want a finished movie or not? Like, that's my advice.
Hey, yeah, exactly. You could have a masterpiece that is never finished. No one ever sees it. Or you could have a pretty damn good movie that's done.
Yeah, let's just get it. It's like, it's not like it's going to be shit. We don't want any shit to be out there, but
right.
Just get it. Focus on what you need to focus on, but not everything has to be perfect. It can't be. It just can't. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's always the same. Every budget I've been on, and I've worked on some Hollywood stuff, it's almost like the same problems always arise.
Mm-hmm.
It's just on there's just more people involved.
It's just more money. I mean, yeah, you're going to have the same thing at local Fox 5 News, or you're going to have the same problems at Fox News headquarters. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, your local Channel 5, you're going to have the same issues than you would at Fox News. So, I mean, yeah, no matter where you go, there you are, right? So, speaking of films, what anything you've been watching, anything you've been streaming, binge watching, or maybe series, films, or even a book or series of books you've been reading?
Besides a shit ton of YouTube videos I just watch,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the last thing I kind of watched, that it kind of stuck out to me was Uncut Gems.
Mm-hmm.
Was a really great movie. I mean, their other movie that they did, Good Times, is really great too. I think that cinema verite, that kind of like realism. I always like that stuff anyway. I love almost like poverty porn films,
Yeah.
movies about like The Bicycle Thief, or films about poverty or people struggling, because I think it's not interesting. It's more of like, oh, this is a different type of struggle that this person has. It's relatable, I think, and that's why I like it. I mean, Uncut Gems was not a relatable thing, but it was a world that you got to see that was a little like, like how we like watching documentaries. It felt so different that you're just like, holy shit, look at this guy, man. What a disaster.
Disaster, man. Dude. I saw Good Time. I really enjoyed Good Time. And for me, Good Time was great because there was that one flinting moment at the very end of, happiness and hope and some sort of success for somebody. But man, Uncut Gems, man, it is just a shit show after shit show.
Yeah. The movie wasn't a shit show, but it was about a shit show, and it was like done very well.
No, it was about a shit show. It was a very well made movie, but not even a glint, not even a hint, not even a glimmer, not even a slight, speck of hope or happiness at all in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I like those types of films. I like, like Kids, or like those kind of realistic kind of,
yeah,
like the unpolished kind of films. Florida Project, was about like a bunch of dirtbag children. But
okay.
Uncut Gems, I mean, yeah, that was the one that kind of stuck out. I have I think I'm over, has so much in my queue, so much on my list. It gets overwhelming on like what to watch, right? And not only am I, we're all going through it, like, how do we make money? What's next? And, maybe I don't have 2 hours anymore. You might end up spending 2 hours watching something, but you kind of watch these smaller videos so then you can move on to the next thing. So I haven't had a chance to watch, I think hopefully one of these days I can kind of binge on a bunch of movies. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot of good shows out there.
Well, you have a trailer on your site, Errand Boys, which reminds me a lot of Uncut Gems.
So that movie, which during this pandemic, that movie was shot on a shoestring budget. I haven't finished editing it. That was something that I kind of put out there. I am going to spend time this year to get it done. It's well deserved. It was like 10 years ago. It was basically my film school. And,
Wow.
there's part of you, it's, when you make a movie, we did it for like $20,000. And, just not having that confidence at the time, and then even editing it, no confidence. And you're in the industry and you're trying to make money and you're just never getting it done because when you're not working, you're looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
So and at least I have some support around me that they're like, listen, just get it done and we're going to help you. And, and as you work, your network gets bigger, right? So at the time I felt like I had no one. So that can come, hopefully I can finish it this year. I know everyone's talking about the market and how, people are buying things up. I don't know if that's still the case. I don't know if it's a true thing. I do know that it's possible that people are looking for content. Obviously, they're always looking for content, but I don't think it's going to be some sort of bidding war. I think it's all fair.
I hear this big, content. Then I've been trying my hand at a couple of things that I have, and it's not crickets. But like you said, man, it's not a bidding war. It's certainly not like people fighting over anything I have.
And then you look at the bigger budget ones, right? They can't do anything with. We're all excited for Tenet, and it's like they're not going to release it until these theaters open because that's a huge revenue stream.
Yeah,
that's the first movie that's going to be once the theaters open up and they're like Tenet. That movie's going to be watched. Hopefully it's great because most of his movies are watched over and over again and kind of bring the theaters out of their kind of situation, and Hollywood as well. But if Hollywood dumps a bunch of movies, like it could be like 2-week windows of movies or just too much. It could be almost too many movies at once.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is overwhelming to see all this content. That's why I think there's not much of a bidding war, because I think people, let's say, I watched everything on Netflix, then they're just going to go to Disney Plus, or they're going to go on Hulu, and then or Amazon Prime. It's just all these little things to catch up on, or just watching YouTube. But yeah, I hope I can finish that this year. I think everyone involved kind of deserves it. And hopefully I kind of deserve it. You wanted to be I don't really have a direction where I'm going in life. I know I just want to be in this business and make a good living. But, directing would be great, or writing would be great, just having creative outlets, right?
Yeah.
It's well, you said with the ADing, like if you, sometimes when you have a creative moment, you're like, the director asks you, like, what can I do? Or what do you think, Glenn? And you're like, oh, he's asking me? And you feel like, yeah, that wasn't that good. Like you feel like, hey, I've created, like you don't have to be this hardline person. You can have a little bit of creative input.
Yeah. No, I'm lucky to say that as an AD, I'm not that hardline person. But I'm very
always thinking about time, right?
Always.
What's next?
Always thinking about time. Always like prepping 3 different scenes before the one we were about to shoot. And so I'm not like that dickhead kind of AD, but I think I piss off people even more because I'm just brutally honest. You're not going to get this done the way you want. It's not happening. Yeah, you got to chop this up. You got to simplify this.
There's only so much you can do. You can't be too hard. If the director and the DP are not on your side, you're the guy who just says roll and cut, right? That's it. And maybe you have no authority to really say, oh, that's it. I'm cutting this scene. We're moving on, or this shot. You don't have that authority. You can just be like, okay, just to let you know, we don't have time for it.
Hey, listen, man, everyone's getting paid OT for 3 hours. I'm okay. All right. I'd rather not get fired. I don't want to upset you guys any further. Obviously, you're upset. I'm going to walk away. But I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of today's schedule, tack it on to tomorrow's call sheet. Good luck. And that's and then they take that, I guess, as sarcasm or passive aggressive behavior, and I'm like, no, man, it's not, dude. It's like I've presented my case. Clearly, you don't want to hear it.
That's all you can do.
Yep. So, but what would you say is on your agenda, your next set of goals? What's on your agenda for, say, next 6 months, maybe hopefully by the time floodgates open?
Well, luckily, I'm still getting calls. You know, I might have a gig in LA. You know, I think I've been kind of hands off on my job searches for the past couple of years. I've been lucky to have kind of a you know, word of mouth or references, and I get the calls as opposed to me making the calls when I first started out. So I kind of put in my head that I'll be fine with not working the rest of the year. If I am in a PM position, I have to, your name's attached to it, like your name. So if the safety is not there, whether you believe in this virus or not, the standard is kind of set, right? You still have to wear a mask. You still, you know, the industry sets a standard of getting tested. But if you don't want to do that, or you want to kind of have shortcuts, I don't want to be a part of that. And there's a lot of things happening now where people are with that same mindset of trying to get it done and cut corners, and what's the big deal? It's like, okay, well, I mean, my job has responsibility, so I can't knowingly, you know, think like, hey, you're cutting corners on testing. I don't want to be, you know, as a crew member, I could, if someone told me, like if I'm a grip and said, hey, you know, people on the show are not getting tested, I would just roll the dice and be like, listen, I'm just going to stay away from everybody.
Right.
But it's different when you're a manager or a supervisor or a coordinator. Like just having that knowledge doesn't sit well. If that's what you're supposed to do. I know, but you know, SAG set that precedent of testing every 3 days and all that. And it's like, well, let's just test for only the SAG people. No, everyone should get the same test, the more accurate test. And, you know, I'm willing to be the PM on a commercial or a smaller shoot and stuff because there's no standard yet. But also I do have that knowledge of that SAG standard. So it's a little, as long as the crew is small and we all understand our risks, fine. But that 3 or 4 week shoot still scares me. And I have to be a little more picky what positions I put myself in. I'm sure even if you think of being an AD and stuff, I think that's also another thing where ADs are put in a situation where, shit, I had to think about that as well. Like when you're enforcing time, it's one thing. It's like enforcing safety, and then all of a sudden one person gets sick, 2 people, I guess not really sick is the right word, but you know, come up positive. And what do you do from there? It's like this. How hard is it to schedule a shoot when it starts to rain? You know, or you know. Now you throw in somebody got positive. Now we got there's no luxury of contact tracing, right? You can't just be like, well, who worked with this person the past 2 days?
Yeah.
Like everybody kind of did.
Yeah.
So what do? I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Technically, I guess you're supposed to be like, you're out, and who are you left with?
Right.
You know, 100 people have been somewhat in contact with this one person, besides maybe people at the office. But if you have runners to the office, that person was on set, and then like, this is why I would rather have other industries. I mean, we're seeing sports kind of deal with it. A bigger industry set this precedent, and I hope in a couple months that, you know, we'll see like what the stats are. I think once we get used to the idea that this is something that we have to live with, and maybe it's not as deadly as it is, and you know, we just roll the dice, and I think it has to be a mutual like understanding all across the board, because right now all it takes is like one positive person to like, you know, yeah, it's just to just kind of shut everything down at 3. 1 is manageable, 3, and then you're just, all it takes is another 1 next week, and you're just like, wait a minute, and then everybody kind of loses that faith in everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's a tough time, and I think I've come to the realization the other day that I think there could be a lot of pain and hurt in the next year. Just acknowledging the trend, right? Like, whether you believe in it or not, or what your politics are, I think people are living their normal lives now. People are, it's going to happen with or without you. This thing is spreading. So accept that, because right now, we're not 4 months ago when everybody stayed home. People are not going to stay home. And even if you just see 1 or 2 people a week, that one person could be seeing 5 people a week. So it's a hard time now to know what the future holds. And then politically, who knows what next year will come. I mean, we might be in a war with China, so I don't know. Depending on who wins.
Yeah. No, you're right. So, and you kind of touched upon the new normal. It's just, the new normal is way more caution, way more stipulations, everything, just tightening everything up, smaller crews, smaller cast list, simpler ideas. They don't have to be simpler, not ideas that are simple, but simpler plots. It doesn't have to be a simpler,
almost efficient.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about how you have what's the goal of the scene? If that's the goal of the scene, can we do it in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of efficiency. And as long as your point is still, if it's still a powerful moment, it's still a powerful moment. But you can do more with less. And and I mean, I am actually worried too. In the independent world, there's a lot of, it's already hard enough when you take indie movies or smaller budget films. You always do more. And you always have multiple jobs. Everybody has multiple jobs. And now with COVID, it's exponential with the amount of work that needs, how much you have to kind of know and do. And, like even as everybody has, even just a crew member, just to being like, I had to clean my own equipment, and, just doing more work and being aware of things, or, having less people to help. Or like, it's like, don't touch me, don't be around me. You almost can't have that group anymore. We're in an industry where everybody works over each other. Now we can't really work over each other. And then if it's enforced, we can't work with each other. But you're seeing on sets still now is just that people are just like, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mention this a lot on my show. I still watch pro wrestling, as immature as that is, but I'm more of an AEW on TNT fan than I am a WWE fan. But they found a workaround. They have less matches, per episode. They're spectators or the wrestlers not wrestling. I think they've been at the same arena or venue or what have you for the last 3 months. It's just been the same spot. Mm-hmm. And their only spectators are the wrestlers not wrestling that week. And so still, they're in an environment. I mean, I don't know what kind of precautions they're taking off duty. I mean, because
you can't ask them to stay at home all the time. Right?
Yeah. Is that what they're asking the NBA players to do?
There's no way.
Because I mean, I know I based on bad media, maybe, NBA players like to party. So, I mean, pro wrestlers, and this is not bad media. This is complete fact. Pro wrestlers like to party, work out, party, and then beat each other up.
I think until we're talking about the new normal, we haven't established the normal yet. And until, politically or not, I think there is something to, let's just everybody get going, and we need to establish some sort of normalcy. The other normalcy is obviously not going to work, because the other normalcy was supposed to be us staying at home.
Mm-hmm.
So if the next normalcy is everybody go back to work, let's start having that, and we'll see what happens, because it's happening, whether it's
Yeah.
with you or not, and we'll see, and we'll learn from each other, and there is something to testing as much as possible, and we're getting more testing, gets more positive results, but also hopefully maybe it does show that this is not as dangerous as it is, but it's highly contagious, and that's a thing. And there is a randomness to it, which is terrifying. But we have to figure out to put this in perspective, because right now it's all so new and so fearful that until we establish that normal, like we won't know how to maybe this gets so normalized that it's like, oh, I got to call off work, guys. I have COVID. And it's like, oh, yeah, so-and-so had COVID 2 weeks ago. It might be one of those things, right? And hopefully it's not the other news where it's like, oh, did you hear he's in the hospital or whatever? Hopefully the more this happens, it's just yeah, I was sick 2 weeks ago, or I was positive 3 months ago. And yeah, half these people on this crew had COVID. I don't know. I mean, that's an optimistic way of looking at it, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope that happens.
Yeah.
Or the other way. I mean, we have to just really control this thing, and we're not doing it. The trend is it's not happening. So you have to kind of jump on that other wagon and hope that this thing dies out in a couple of years. And it's here to stay.
It's here to stay. And the only thing that's for me that's going to put me back into like set life, and I miss set life, but really, with the exception, of some other things that I have to do, I'm not really going to be out there in the general public until there's a vaccine. I can't, and me, the wife, the baby, can't risk it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and these new productions are the bigger ones with the money. I mean, they're asking their people to isolate together. But I mean, just think about the pool of people at that point. You limit, if I asked you to come out and work on a movie, it's like, listen, you can't see your wife and kid for 2 months. You're gonna be, I can't get the job. But if you allow me, I can ensure that I won't go anywhere with my wife and kid, and maybe sign an attestation or something. But I mean, it's just one of those things where it's just like, man, that's such a hard thing to do, man, to ask people. I mean, that's why the wrestling, there's no way these guys are going to be asked to, hey, you do your job, you go back to your hotel room, and you stay there.
maybe that is what they're doing. Maybe
they are trying to, but it's not enforced.
And like you mentioned, an attestment, maybe an attestment is what you call it, right?
I think it's called an attestation.
An attestation.
Yeah.
Maybe they wrote, a lot of these wrestlers put it on paper. Hey, look, I have a wife, I have 2 children, age this and age that. They're doing this, so those are the only people I'm going to be spending time with. Hey, maybe the network put them up somewhere. Maybe they have a bigger schedule in mind.
But here's the thing: all it takes, since it's so contagious, all it takes is that one person to infect everyone. I mean, you saw those cruise ships and stuff, and you're seeing the NBA and everywhere else right now. It just takes one person, and it's like, you can say all you want about how many. You're not testing the caterer. You don't know where the food comes from. The delivery guy. It just takes that. You're not in a bubble, so it's really hard to be in any sort of industry that has that standard. Walmart, is not testing everybody. And Amazon, I'm sure, is not testing everybody. The way we're in an industry where we had to test everybody all the time. But then again, we're in an industry where you ask of people to work without a mask, so.
Right. Yeah.
But those are the bubbles that you have to create. But I don't, I guess it's failing. It's going to continue to fail in a sense. But if everyone just keeps going with it, maybe it just becomes a reality. I mean, I think we're obviously not ready to, if we wanted to control this virus, then we're not ready to go back to work. But if it's something where we all can agree on that it's going to be contagious and it's going to spread, and we're just going to work and try to slow the exposure, then I think that's something that we can, I think that's something where we're heading. But the reality is it's not going away. And I think right now you're starting to see the new normal. And in a month or two, when the industry's at its normal, right? And everybody else is working. Once everyone's working, that's the normal, I think.
Yeah.
That's the normal. And then we're just going to hear cases. And the news is not going to be about the count maybe anymore. Maybe it's about something else. And like I said before, our conversations are going to be, hey, I got the COVID, or I know some, half the crew got the COVID or something. Not from the same shoot, but as time passes, it's something that has affected everyone we know. I don't know about you. I don't know if you know anybody that has got it. I don't know anybody personally, but it will get to us, I think.
Now, I know someone that knows someone.
Yeah, like we're all
and even that like sent us into a frenzy.
Right.
And so the people that we know directly got tested and they all came back negative, thank God. And so, but we were a bit anxious, because that's all, like you said, that's all it takes, man. It's just one person. And it's not even, and I mentioned this a number of times on this show, is that it's not even like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's not even 6 degrees of separation. It's like 2.
Yeah.
I know a person that knows a person, and there was a high chance that they could have gotten it from that person. And there's a high chance I could have gotten it from the person I know, So it's like,
that would be kind of funny of the COVID degrees of Kevin Bacon.
COVID degrees of Kevin Bacon.
If it was only 2 degrees of COVID that you're related to Kevin Bacon.
two degrees of infection, not separation, but 2 degrees of infection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be funny.
So one last bit of advice for our viewers.
Advice in the industry?
Sure.
I mean, I think in the industry, I think it's really what your belief is. I think it's really, there's nothing wrong with staying out of the picture and seeing how it goes. But I think everyone else, well, not everyone else, but then there's a portion of the populations that they're gonna continue, and they're gonna keep working, and they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I think I don't have any advice for anyone because everyone's belief is so different. I think if anyone's listening to this show or watching this show, I think they kind of know where I stand, and you have a level of belief where you have to dictate and stand up for what you want, whether it's COVID related or not, but you need to, better now, right? You know what to expect from somebody. So don't take a job or don't work for somebody that you might know that's going to put you in a compromising position. And it's okay to work if you want to work, and it's okay as long as you know the risks. Everybody has their degrees of danger out there, and they're willing to do some things. And yeah, I think at this time is really, I think the advice is like, bring up your issues in the beginning. Like, don't wait it out. Demand. Maybe you don't have a demand, but if you want to opt out. Like, it's okay. Like, I think the more people speak up, the more things can change, whether it's working conditions or the COVID thing. I think especially as producers and production managers, I think we need to listen, and then the crew too. And we don't need a union to unionize on those points. I think it's so small anyway. We're, especially in the indie world, we're a mom and pop. It's like being at a mom and pop store. Like, don't ever feel like you're nothing, but also, do it in a way that's effective instead of, shouting or anything like that, which I'm sure we've run into. Or don't wait and hold it in. Like, it's an issue, bring it up. I think for the most part, everyone's pretty reasonable. For the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, Steve Nguyen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, talking to me. Any last plugs, socials, links you wanna put out there?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple movies that will be coming out. One's out on demand now. It's called What We Found. There's a movie called Snow Babies I worked on. It will be on demand the 29th of September. And then another movie on demand, A Call to Spy, on October 2nd on demand. And, yeah, and then you can find me if you want to search. I'm on film.org, the Philadelphia website. You can look me up, or maybe our paths will cross one day. No social media things I want to plug or anything like that. I have them, but I don't need it.
Okay. Great. Well, yeah, Steve, can't thank you enough for coming on the show, and to what few viewers out there that I have, you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and check us out next time.
Thank you, guys.